Treat your ETA efforts like a startup. If you're doing it part-time, then you get part-time results. Entrepreneur or an acquisition entrepreneur, you're still a startup until you land that deal.
You're listening to Before You Buy or Sell a Business, hosted by Jared Johnson, the top SBA lender in the country. On this show, we break down business acquisitions, talk to industry pros, and provide real-world advice for buyers and sellers.
Can't get capital, can't find leads. That's the boogeyman stuff, right? But many of the times, that's not what's keeping people back from being successful in their searches. So I want to keep that out. All right. Pattern number 2, real barriers versus self-imposed. By the way, I'm not on, am I?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I don't see the green light.
Recording or your microphone?
My microphone.
No, your microphone.
Well, this one's on, but I don't think the other one's on. It's not green. Okay, I see the green blinking now. We're good. Okay, so real barriers versus self-imposed ones. I've heard this, and you probably heard this too, that certain people won't give you the time of day. Brokers won't talk to you. Business owners won't talk to you. Lenders won't lend to you or won't even take your phone calls, that kind of stuff. And I want to say that some of these barriers are real and some of them are self-imposed. So the real ones, obviously, what you're seeing there on the left, these are real barriers. If you call a broker and the broker says, well, I need you to fill out PFS, that's a real barrier, right? Now, that's not to say that there are not ways to circumvent or to get around or to maneuver through them, but those are real barriers that exist here. You will find that you need to prove your ability to actually complete the acquisition. Those real barriers. On the right, these are self-imposed ones. These are ones that tend to, I want to call them the silent killers, right? There's what talks you out of going forward, kind of, so to speak. As an acquirer, as a searcher, you have to navigate and solve both of these issues. We all have them. We all have our perceptions of what's going on and what happened, and we have to deal with them. So this is one of those areas that I've noticed quite a bit when I look at some of the searchers that are out there, when they come back and say, well, I couldn't get this deal, or I couldn't get access to this individual person or this owner. Many times, it's not the real issue, it's the perceived. Now, if you were to take just really an inventory of how you're approaching things and some of your real versus perceived barriers. Let's say you take a sheet of paper, you draw down the middle of the line, and you look at, well, what's a real barrier to you? What's something tangible that is presenting itself that you have to navigate? And then you put the stuff that you think are just perceived, your perceptions. Maybe they're not taking my phone call because they don't like the way I look, or there may be some other barriers that are there. You can write the perceived ones on the other side. Here's the thing about that. The ones on the left, you can actually mitigate. You can hire other people. You can engage with people that can help you to solve those problems. The ones on the right, that's on you, right? That's something internal you have to deal with. But I'll leave you with this thought, that when it comes to these self-imposed barriers, they're infinite. Meaning the space that you give it to occupy in your mind, it will fill up. So the more space you give it, the more it's going to fill up. It doesn't stop, right? The ones on the left, did I say that right? Yeah, the real barriers, they're finite. You have solutions that you can use within the industry to kind of solve that. Ooh, my voice came out pretty bad. I'll put it around the go. All right, pattern number 3. Best searchers build systems. I'm calling this the acquisition operating system. So we have a participant that was part of our November cohort. And he built a simple system, and it was made up of a spreadsheet, had a couple of tabs on there. And he wasn't just tracking deals. He was managing the search process. And in fact, the first tab had a lot of the activity and had really the stages of his search environment. The second tab, he actually had his goals and KPIs that gave him an indication, are you meeting the goals that you put forth in front of yourself? So what he put together was really managing the entire process to search and find and be able to obtain a particular business. So success wasn't coming just from the effort alone. It really came from having a structure and having a system that they can do, and that can also help keep him in check in this particular case to make sure that he's progressing and doing the things that he set out to do. So I encourage those of you in this room that haven't successfully purchased a business that you really need to approach this where it's like an operating system for yourself as well. And I'm not just talking about keeping track of who you called, but who you called, what was the contact, what was the result of that, what stage are you in that process? Did you get a chance to talk to the broker? Did you get a chance to talk to the owner? How many meetings did you have with the owner? Were you able to submit an LOI? Did you get a win? Did you get a loss? All of that stuff is valuable data as you're building your, and I heard someone talk about reps earlier, as you're building your repetitions in, and you're getting, I want to say used to, I'm kind of giving away the next slides, but you're getting used to the process and being able to expand your vision in this. So I say that I saw that quite a bit as a stumbling block. People will say, I'm going to put my spreadsheet together, and they get very motivated and start putting stuff on that spreadsheet, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, 4 weeks into it, they don't remember who they contacted. They're just not very consistent with it. The system they've implemented was just a contact list as opposed to a system to help them through the entire process. So I would encourage that. Build your own version of an acquisition operating system. And if you're not using AI tools, why not? You literally can prompt and give it your requirements of how you want that system to look, and it can build it for you in minutes. I don't mean days, I mean in minutes. It's there. So some of the things that you can keep track of course, is the deal assessments. Quickly ascertain something, get it off your list if it's not part of your target, but you're still keeping track that that was something you've discarded, right? Relationship, as I mentioned before, tracking that, the status before everything. And of course, if you are following like that gentleman that I'm mentioning that had his own acquisition operating system, checking for your goals and whether or not you're making your performance metrics to achieve those particular goals. So, all right. Pattern number 4, measure activities, not outcomes. Okay, so we're focused on buying the business. That's the outcome, right? That's the ultimate goal. And by the way, that you really can't control. And some of you who've successfully done this, and some of you who are still going through the process, you're finding out that you could have the best deal in front of you. You could have made wonderful contact with the brokers, made wonderful contact with the business owner, and you've submitted your LOI, and someone else got their LOI signed, not you, right? So when I say you can't control the outcome itself, and by the way, if you have a signed LOI, that doesn't mean you're going to get the deal, right? You're going to close on that business because there are other things you have to do during your due diligence period, right? So the outcome or the result of buying the business, you can't control that occurs with any guarantee. What can you control? The activity, right? You can control the activity that increases your probability to getting to that outcome. So you measure and you track what you can control, right? And that's what the successful ones who close on their deals that I've had these conversations with compared to those who have not, is that they're measuring the activity, not getting discouraged, like, oh, I sent out this LOI and it didn't get signed, and they kind of give up. Well, I'd love to, even baseball's a humbling sport, right? Who's that best hitter right now, or baseball guy? What's his name? And does anybody follow baseball? I should have never used that analogy, right? Is it Otani, or whatever his name is in Los Angeles? Okay, so his batting average is like 300, which means 70% of the time, he doesn't get on a base. He's striking out, right? Doesn't get on base at all. That's a humbling thing to know if you're the best in the world at something and you're still batting 30% success rates. So, are any of you the best in the world at acquisitions right now? Anyone? Even those who've done it before. Are you the best in the world? Okay, so then your batting averages, be realistic with yourself. Just because you got a couple of LOIs out there doesn't mean you're going to close. You have to, understand that and focus on the activities. Am I being consistent? And we've heard this in so many different ways, right? We've heard if you want to be successful, work on developing the right habits, right? That's what we're talking about here too. Do the reps, get the right habits, so to speak. Set targets for yourself, and then keep track of you building those habits, and your success ratio will increase. Your probability, not ratio, your probabilities will increase. Okay. Reps create vision. I love the conversation that I overheard. They were talking about getting reps in. I think I know who it was, but I won't call them out right now, right? But I love the conversation.
Tell you a quick story. Well, my sons were young, and they were interested in playing football in Little League. My sons, we took them out, of course. I'm that dad. Yeah, we're gonna play football. We're gonna do this. That kind of stuff. Took them to the field every practice, and my sons were fantastic athletic-wise. Endurance-wise, and the ability to, one of my sons was a wide receiver, and he ran routes, and he was the best route runner on that team, okay? Best pair of hands, could catch. And I knew this, not just because I'm the parent, because all parents think their kids are the best, right? But I knew this, and everyone else on that field knew this. And the coach never put my kid in to start in any of the games for that whole first year. By the fourth game, I went to the coach afterwards and says, hey, we've lost 3, we won 1, so we're 1-3, and you have the best player as a wide receiver on your roster, but you're not starting him. What's going on? And the coach responded to me, and I have that quote up there, okay? He doesn't have football eyes yet. I didn't get that right away. I get it now, right? The more that my son is playing on that practice team, and the more that he's out there getting those repetitions, the more he starts to see patterns that develop. Yes, you can run the route. Yes, you can have the hands. Yes, you can do all the stuff textbook-wise to be good at what you're doing. But if you're not in that game, taking those snaps,
and we can attest to it, we're that Monday morning quarterbacks. We can talk about why the quarterback didn't do this, didn't do that. But if you're not on that field, you're not developing those football eyes. The same thing goes here. If you're not doing this and putting in the repetition to go through what it takes, how many deals you're going to review, those kinds of things, you're not developing your acquisition eyes. I made that up, by the way, acquisition eyes. You like that? Yeah, I kind of like that. So you're not developing those acquisition eyes. You're not going to be able to see opportunities that you would have seen if you waited until, or let me rephrase that. By the time your 100th deal occurs, you're seeing things that other acquirers, other searchers are not seeing because your eyes are being developed, right? You're watching the patterns. You're being able to observe it. So I say that I totally get that concept. And really what we're talking about is compounding, right? Whether it be your compounding investments, before we talk about compound interest all the time, over time, eventually you get to the point where your money's making more money than you are, right? At least that's what social media keeps telling me, right? So that compounding effect, your brain is the best compounding tool that exists. The more you repeat something and expose it to something, the greater it learns. It understands patterns. It recognizes things. So someone that's been doing this and seen 100 deals and someone who's just starting out, you're not competing. You really aren't. The person with the acquisition eyes, I like that. Acquisition eyes. They're going to see things you can't see. So in terms of expectations, I would say to the entire group, commit to the process. Commit to doing the reps. Commit to getting in, developing those eyes, because you're going to start to see the invisible things that nobody else on that field is looking at unless they're playing the game like you are. So in terms of how do you apply this, I've heard people talk about, I'm going to use Biz by Sell because they're here, right? So they'll talk about, some of the deals that are on Biz by Sell, they're already looked by brokers and not a good thing. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? That's a way for you to get in the game, start to see exactly what the industry's seeing, what the brokers are showing you. They're doing some work for you. They're vetting deals, and I've read the books. If it goes to a broker, they want the deal. They're not interested in creative finances and structures and all that stuff. I've heard it all. Here's what I'm submitting to all of you today. Put your reps in, right? In fact, one of our cohort members, the success of being able to buy their first company came through going on Biz by Sell, meeting a broker, and then that broker introducing to another broker. So those connections are real. But he put the reps in. the opportunity started to present itself. I know that's kind of a different lesson, so to speak, but don't try to skip that repetition part. That's part of your development. That's part of developing your education. And I will say this, treat the first 100 deals that you see that's coming across like tuition for those acquisition eyes that you're going to recognize the right one when it comes. Make sense? Okay, let's keep going. Pattern number, I have my glasses up. Should I put that on? Okay. Wow, it looked like 8 first. I'm like, did I get through the presentation so fast? Let me put that on. Yeah, that's 6. Okay, so don't let your first acquisition be held hostage by your final vision. I could talk so much about this that we could take up the rest of the time. Believe me when I say this, Jared. One of the things I kind of hate to hear is don't buy a job. Okay? Not that it's not true that if you're buying a company below a certain threshold, you're probably going to be the owner and the operator at the same time. What I don't like about it is that it kind of gives everybody the depiction that that's not something that's going to be valuable to them. I go back to repetition and building your vision in your eyes, right? Not just from the acquirer, but from an operator as well. Okay. Gentlemen, actually I met at the last Acquire Fort Worth meeting that we had here, the previous one to this. He and I actually attended the same boot camp in Florida. $4,000 we spent a few days in Florida to take it. Very well-known boot camp that was there. That was more than 2 years ago. We started the conversation, hey, we recognized each other, immediately clicked, started talking about it. And he was still searching for his first acquisition. And he also informed me that only one other member of the 28 people that took it with us actually had purchased a business 2 years later, more than 2 years later. So that got me thinking about, that interaction, that conversation. So I asked him, so how's your search going? What's your, what are you seeing? What's going on? And he was telling me he had his very specific buy box. He had his threshold, 750 EBITDA, STE, and I want a management team in place, and I want, to be a semi-absentee type of ownership environment, and that's what he is looking for. And 2 years later, he's still looking for it, right? So sometimes having that kind of threshold or vision in mind, that perfection that you have in mind can hold you back from getting in the game. I put a couple of really outrageous kind of quotes up there, but I want you to think about that for a moment. In any other industry, in this case, golf and flying an airplane, that's my 2 examples. If you were saying to me today, I want to learn how to play golf, but only if I can start in the PGA, how realistic is that? What if I want to be a pilot, but only if the first plane I fly is a 787 Boeing? How realistic is that? That's what we're saying to ourselves. Many times we're saying, I'm not going to buy and get into the game unless it's at the price point and the unicorn that every private equity firm and independent searcher is looking for. And I'm not going to touch anything below that because I have this vision that I'm going to work part-time, spend all the days with my family, my kids, travel the world, take all these pictures on Instagram and TikTok, all this other wonderful stuff. But that's essentially what we're saying, right? We won't look at anything except for the prize. So when I say the first acquisition is not or shouldn't be your last, that's not your final vision, is it? Is it? No, right? So get your reps in, right? Maybe you don't look for the 750. Maybe you look for the $100,000 job that you're avoiding, but for the last 2 years, that gentleman could have bought a business, paid himself a 6-figure salary, learned the operation of that organization. And by year 2, what happens now? He's got traction. He's got, experience in that particular field because he's an operator. So he has credibility to a financial institution that, and I'm sure some of you know this, and SBDC guys here, Kevin's here, they can attest that if you're buying a business within your space, some banks will give you 100% financing for that acquisition. No money out of your pocket for that. But if you're waiting to start on the PGA, I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying, get your reps in, get your vision going, and get your vision as an operator as well. And yeah, if it's a job, I'd rather be working for 2 years for myself, pay myself a salary. Yes, I'm gonna, be a starving Marvin, and we can get those analogies if I'm gonna, clean pool services or whatever, and make exactly a certain amount of money. I don't want to discount that, because that's experience that you're paying yourself to learn. What do I mean by that? You can pay an institution like TCC or someone else to go buy and get the education or get the experience that someone else spent 10,000 hours obtaining. We all know this, right? Or you can buy a company that pays you a salary so you can learn to be a great operator. You can implement your systems, and then by year 2 and year 3 and year 4, you're doing the bolt-ons, you're executing on that private equity type of strategy. So mastery is sequential. Just keep that in mind. You don't start in the 787 going. You don't start the LPGA and the PGA. You don't start there, right? You can tell I don't really watch golf. Okay. I like the whole hitting thing, but now I'm hitting the ball more than I'm missing at this point, but that's it. I can't putt or I'm top golf. That's it for me, right? So vision, it's worth it to get it as an operator too. So don't let your first acquisition hold up your ability to, to make traction towards your larger goals, your vision of being able to be on the other end of that private equity spectrum, and you're selling for 15 times, your valuation. Okay, let's move on. So the next pattern that I've observed, personal challenges become acquisition challenges. Through many conversations with people that are getting into the space, they will talk about their personal challenges that are there. I'm not going to sugarcoat any of that. I can't pretend or presume to know how those personal challenges are going to affect you. Here's what I can say. No one does this in a vacuum. Every one of us have personal challenges. Again, I'm not marginalizing it. What I am telling you is that you have to find a way to navigate this space in spite of those challenges, right? And every one of us have to go through this. And I won't take light or make light of, someone may be going through a divorce, financial situations. They may impact people differently. Like, if I don't know where my next paycheck is going to come from next month, that may be detrimental to my ability to have any sane, rational conversations or respond rationally to anything, because that's so important or weighs on my mind. It could be for someone else the divorce they're going through. It could be for someone else that, I don't know what challenges there are, but we all deal with them differently. I'm saying we all have to deal with them differently. You will not do this in a vacuum. You've got to find a way to navigate that and navigate the challenges of finding a business. They overlap. You can't separate them. I love when people say, business is business, personal is personal. I've never seen that in implementation. Of course, my staff will probably tell you that I don't smile and I don't laugh, so maybe I don't have emotions. I don't know. But all personal iterations or challenges affect us all, just in different ways. That 2 circles that you see there, personal issues in life and the search process, that part in the middle, and it's kind of like that Venn diagram, whatever, but that part in the middle, that gap, that wall, or whatever you want to call it, we all have to navigate it. So, challenge is not waiting for something that's perfect or perfect situations in that sense. You got to move forward. You got to do things regardless. Okay, another observations that I'm seeing. Proximity creates opportunity. At each of our acquisition or accelerators that we have, we've had 3 of them so far, we have a networking event on day 2 of it at Topgolf. This is where I get to practice swinging, but don't have to really play golf. Okay. The last one that just occurred, we invited the previous 2 cohorts as well to participate in it. And during that, we had a member from the first cohort connected with a member from the second cohort. They knew each other. And they didn't know that they both took the actual cohort, but they knew each other previously. Like, hey, you doing this? Hey, and the conversation started. By the end of the conversation, it turned out that the member of the second cohort had access to sellers or someone who was a business owner that's ready to sell, but it wasn't in that person's buy box. They were not interested in that industry. They were defined, etc. But the person from the first cohort, that was exactly what they were looking for. Now, that conversation occurred because proximity, right? The more you show up, the more you interact, the more, and I'll point out one more thing. They shared what they were looking for. They shared their common struggles with it. So I encourage you in events like this, don't just shake hands with people, but share what you're doing. What are you engaged in? How are you? What are you seeing that's out there? Which is pretty much the conversation tonight, right? But in communicating what they're going through, the opportunity started to present itself as well. So we all know this is a relationship business, right? Yeah, business is about relationships. So the more you put yourself in the proximity of that kind of activity, the more you'll see those acquisition eyes develop, the more you'll see opportunities develop, and then hopefully, again, you'll improve your odds of success in that sense. So share what you're working on and connect and show up. Next pattern, best opportunities start as situations. So I'll give you another story. And when I give you a story, these are actually real things, right? I attended this peer CEO group. And in this peer CEO group, they get together up to a dozen CEOs in different industries, and they come together once a month to talk about their challenges. And they use the other CEOs, they'll present their challenge, one CEO, and the other CEOs will give them, suggestions, advice, talk about how they dealt with it, what they can do to implement it, and to vet the ideas or the challenges that CEO was talking about. It was fascinating to watch. A facilitator goes through the whole process and all the CEOs get a chance to say that. So during that, one of the owners talked about they wanted to sell their company in 3 to 5 years. So they knew that she wanted to sell in 3 to 5 years. She presented her growth strategies and said, hey, this is how I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And all the CEOs were talking about what they implemented, their marketing, their this, their that, how they implemented their sales, etc. And that's the advice that she got. At the end of that, I approached her and said, have you thought about acquisitions? And I could see the light bulb click like that. She's like, oh my gosh, no, I didn't. And then the conversation kind of changed. So I do have a follow-up meeting with that individual, just kind of talk about, see what is on her mind in that particular case. But I'm going to ask you this, putting on your acquisition lenses here, what opportunities can derive from that kind of an interaction? And don't say that maybe someone will buy, maybe I'll buy the business in 5 years. That's the obvious one. Give me some other opportunities that may present itself just from that situation. This is where you respond now. Yeah. Anybody? Aside from closing the business, give me some other opportunities that you might see. Referrals, absolutely. And referrals meaning that I could be teeing up potential acquisition targets for that lady, and there could be a relationship involved there where everyone that I tee up, I get a referral fee, right? I'm using myself and I, but point is any one of you could be in that position. What else do you see?
You might need a new skill set on the team, another person can fill that role.
There you go, right? She may need a skill set that can deal with, well, how do you go through acquisitions and you incorporate cultures of other organizations that you're buying? Can you find someone? Maybe I know someone that has done this before, and that connection is now there, right? Absolutely. What else? Anything else comes to mind? What?
Broadens your network.
Definitely broadens my network. Absolutely. So all of this that we're talking about, and I know I'm putting you all on the spot to come up with this off the cuff, so to speak, but the situation brings forth other opportunities that are there. Maybe I can be a consultant. And in terms of the referral fee, what if I did it for free and took a percentage of the business when she sells it in 5 years? Maybe I work for free, but I'm teeing it up and I'm meeting all of you guys and I'm saying, who do you know in this space? Can you help me? And I find a deal, help her tee up, advise her, not actually implementing it myself. But I get an equity stake. And when she cashes out in 5 years, that could be an opportunity too. So I say this because the more that you're in this game, the more you see other plays that can develop. Does that make sense again? Boy, I'm kind of harping on that, aren't I? Yeah, okay. All right. Are we at number 10 now? We sure are. You said that too quickly, like, yeah, hurry up. Industry teaches transactions better than ownerships. Okay, so entrepreneurship through acquisition, we've become, as an industry, very good at teaching people the mechanics, right? Teaching people the transactional piece of it, the sourcing, the lending, the valuation, the due diligence, what's involved with all the stages. This is true. We've become good at that. Again, those are transactional, and courses, brokers, all that sort of stuff. That content is overwhelmingly that's either online, and you can spend a lot of time doing that. There's a lot of resources out there, or you can take structured courses like the one we put together. I'm not knocking that. What I'm saying is that we're becoming very good at teaching the mechanics of it. But what happens when you become the operator, the owner, right? Ownership requires different skill sets, and all of you would probably attest to that. Right? So closing a deal is not the starting line. That's actually another beginning line. I say another because your search process is a starting line. But once you acquire the business, that's the beginning of another race that you're running, right? You're now becoming the operator. So transitioning your skills from searching to now being the owner operator, that's also a transformation you have to go through. And many of you have probably been told that once you go through an acquisition, you should have your 90-day plan, right? I cannot stress to you how important that is. I know that we're busy looking for the deal, but I can't stress to you how important it is to have that 90-day, what's that first 90 days going to look like to you? Because it also changes your mindset from trying to find that deal to now that I got it, what am I going to do with it? This is your value creation plan. This is what you should have developed in your mind. When you get that LOI signed, you should have a value creation plan. How are you going to grow this business? What is your intent to do so? Actually, you should have that long before that, right? Because that's part of your buy box strategy. When you're intending to buy a particular company, you should have a value creation plan for if you're successful. When you're successful, what are you going to do? Okay, so that transition, I think we need to do a much better job as an ecosystem that's supporting all of this, is how do we create those growth environments? Let's see. In terms of, in this aspect of the proximity, I wanted to kind of go back to that in a way that just basically says, this is part of that. You coming out here tonight is part of the proximity aspect. And if you haven't seen that pattern in some of the other conversations that I had, like for example, the networking events, the CEO roundtables, all that sort of stuff, the collisions that some of the cohort members had by just getting together, okay, that's proximity. That's getting in the company, getting in the space of the people that you want to be doing business with, the people that you actually want to aspire to be. I think it was, Onassis, who used to be one of the richest men in the world back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, made his billions in that dollar frame. Of course, I don't think it was a billion at that. But he was the richest man in the world at one point, and he did it off of oil, shipping containers, ships that would transport oil. And he was asked at one point that if he lost all his money, what would he do? And his answer was simple. I would be in the proximity of the people that have money. So he would literally go and hang out in the country club. Even if he didn't have money to be in the country club, he'd get a job, busting the tables or whatever. But proximity to the people who had the capital, who were the business decision makers, he would just be in that room. Doesn't have to know them, he will be in that room. Why? It's like going to San Francisco and going to a Starbucks. You really can't leave Starbucks without thinking of a startup idea, right? Everybody's starting up a business, everybody's their own CEO, they're all looking for talent. You go in there, you spend 20 minutes, you're like, man, I got to start a company. It's infectious, right? So that proximity is important. So I would challenge all of you. It's tough to get out to every event, especially while you're looking for that first acquisition. I get that. Maybe pick one or two different communities and you show up regularly, routinely. You help support that community. This could be one of them. Actually, I'm hoping that this will be one of them, right? Jared's hoping too, right? Yeah, we're both on the same page. So, but pick communities that you can engage with and routinely get out there, be present, and support it. So, okay, so final thoughts in this. After watching lots of people who are aspiring to be in the industry, lots of people who've successfully done this, I'm totally convinced that success really isn't finding the perfect business. It's really about developing the right mindset. And the people who progress tend to develop their mindset, their systems and they take action. So I want to kind of bring us back to that for a moment. Staying power. It's not about your intelligence in this sense, right? It's about your consistency in this way. That doesn't change in looking for a business. Now I'm going to throw a final thought to you, which is a little bit different than what you're probably going to hear when you're out there talking about ETA. We all know that the opportunity today is that businesses, startups, they fail at 70%. Fail within 5 years. We know that, right? Okay, so the ETA community, we are evangelists preaching that. I'm one of them. I'll go out there and say, you want to be an entrepreneur? 70% of your 70% chance that whatever you start, you're going to fail in within 5 years. And I also follow it up with, that's like saying, if I have a great idea and I'm coming to you for your investment money, and I say to you, give me some of that money. Yeah, I'm being straight. Give me some of your money so I can start this business. And before you hand me a check, I say, by the way, there's a 70% chance I'm going to lose all the money you're about to give me within 5 years. How many of you are still going to invest in that idea? So I usually run with that, right? That kind of hits home. Here's the thing I want to present to all of you, that we preach that graveyard, that 70% will fail, but startups that are successful, you're going to start naming a few things. Do they get there casually? Do they start their business and every now and then they look for a customer, and every now and then they put some effort towards that, and every now and then they be consistent. Where did I get my grammar from? They're consistent with capturing that information in some sort of a repeatable system. What about having
their model validated? In our realm, we call that validating your thesis, right? So when you're starting a company, you're going out there with this business model in mind. And when we tell people starting up in the startup community, you have to validate, not just think of it, because everybody has great ideas, but can you take that idea and get in front of your customers and validate that what you're saying actually has traction? Okay, if this is sounding like something you're familiar with, that's the whole point, right? In terms of building a repeatable system, do you think you're going to start a business and not have a system in place to consistently serve your customer what they're expecting to get? Okay, you don't have to show your hand. I'm going to ask the question, but how many of you maybe did this yourself or know someone that has a holding company that they use for their search? Okay, I was say nobody. I told you not to raise your hand, and nobody really did. But one, thank you. They didn't leave me by myself out there. Appreciate that. So that holding company, that entity that he and I have for searches, that's a startup, guys, girls. That's a startup. What you're doing is exactly what a startup does. You're validating your thesis. You're validating whether or not the customers you're trying to buy, you're trying to acquire, will actually sell you, or in this case, sell you their products. So I guess it's kind of a flip or inverse relationship, but you get the point, right? You're not going to get validation in your computer, in your office, or in your home, just looking at deals and looking at what people are posting online, and you not getting out in front of that particular owner and saying, hey, I'm interested, and having that conversation and building that relationship. So treat your ETA efforts like a startup. Yeah, I said it, like a startup, right? And put systems in place that if you are successful at this startup, you can actually continue to, and by the way, as you build these skill sets, people who have those systems, people who have the right mindset, who have the right system in place and take action, do you think they're going to be successful as an operator too? That indication of what they did to actually get the business, do you think it stops there? No, when they get their business, they're going to implement systems. They're going to evaluate their processes. They're going to approach it in that particular way too. The likelihood of their success as an operator also increases from doing that. So I'm telling all of you today that your efforts as an entrepreneur or an acquisition entrepreneur, you're still a startup until you land that deal. So treat it that way. It's a business. If you're doing it part-time, then you get part-time results. If you're doing it casually, good luck. 70% of you are going to fail. And if we apply that same logic to that, 70% of us in this room are going to fail at finding a successful acquisition. Okay, that kind of sucks now, doesn't it, to hear it that way? But if you treat it casually, that's exactly what you're doing. All right. So I really wanted to focus this presentation a little bit on the human side. And again, this is not empirical data. This is my observations over the last 2.5 years, engaged with the ETA community, listening to folks like yourself, and hearing some of the challenges that are there. I didn't give you any solutions to some of these observations, right? You guys kind of have to figure some of that stuff out on your own. The personal challenges that we have in our lives, this is why you have mentors. This is why you have people that you can, you get involved with these kinds of groups that can hold accountability to you, that no matter what's happening, they're going to help push you, help get you over the head. This is why you should be developing and getting your family ready for this, right? Because they're going to be impacted by your search as well. This is about developing a support structure that can help you through this trying time of your acquisition startup, okay?
We're partnering with a community college in Tarrant County, and we're focused on getting people together that are looking to buy businesses. So we'll get people together to either discover acquiring a business, or maybe they're already in the process of looking, or they may have recently acquired a business. So our hope is to get those people together, have some great conversations, and continue to hone the craft and get better and better at buying businesses. Come check it out. It's Acquire Fort Worth. You can find it on my website. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions. We'll be updating those events as they come together. So hopefully we'll see you soon there. And again, thank you for stopping by. I hope that this has been fruitful for you, and I wish you all the luck as you look for a business in the future.
Thank you all for listening to Before You Buy or Sell a Business. If you found value in this episode, please follow the show, leave a positive review, and share it with someone. For more information, check out jaredwjohnson.com. We'll see you all next time.